Welcome to the Free Cities Podcast. My name is Timothy Allen, and this is the official podcast of the Free Cities Foundation. Hello and welcome to this, our pre-conference episode of the Free Cities Podcast. Next week, of course, I will be in the Czech Republic with many of you, listening to talks, networking, and generally soaking up the Free Cities vibe in the historic heart of the wonderful city of Prague. Now, if you're a last-minute wannabe attendee, you can, of course, get yourself over to libertyinourlifetime.org and secure a ticket. And if you can't make it to Prague in person, well, there's always an online ticket which will allow you to join in live from the comfort of your own home. Back to today's show, and my guest is the longtime Bitcoiner and friend of the Free Cities Foundation, Daniel Prince. Now, Daniel is, of course, the host of the Once Bitten Podcast, which is one of the biggest and best known in the Bitcoin space. But also, and thankfully for us, he has kindly agreed to MC our conference this year. So I figured it would be a good idea to drop an episode in which I got to sit down and pick his brains for a couple of hours before you get to meet him in person next week. In this episode, we dive down a number of rabbit holes, but most notably we discuss the education system, work, food, health, and how to generally escape many aspects of the so-called matrix, as it is often coined. And also, since we are both family men, there is a fair bit of banter on the subject of bringing up well-adjusted kids and travelling with your family. I hope you enjoy the episode. It's always a pleasure to speak to Dan. Can't wait to hang out in Prague next week and hopefully see you there too. But in the meantime, of course, just sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Daniel Prince. And I went down the vitamin D rabbit hole. Because there's a number of people during COVID said, look, D's a great thing for your immune system anyway, and everyone's depleted of D, apparently. And so I started taking D, and I just kept that up, because after you go down the D rabbit hole a bit, you think, well, what's the worst that can happen? Everyone's depleted in Vit D because we get it from the sun, basically, a chemical, a reaction with the sun, and we spend much more time inside than we historically would have done, I suppose. Mm-hmm. So I did D, and then I think I probably watched a Joe Rogan episode and someone said B12 was good, so I put that in. And then the niacin thing happened. Now, you seem to know more about it than me, but I have to say I did. I started taking niacin and something called NMN, resveratrol. And I don't know if it's just me, but I do look physically younger, and when I look at myself in the mirror every morning, I'm like, there's just a little bit of a like you look more vibrant or more whatever or something. Very unscientific, I know, but come on then, what's your experience of niacin? Like, I think I started taking it because you spoke to a guy on your podcast who wrote a book about niacin, didn't he?
No, I haven't got that author on, unfortunately, trying to track him down. But I've had 2 episodes about niacin. The first one was just a pleb, a normal dude that reached out because I have the Once Bitten podcast is about Bitcoin generally. And this guy DMs me and says, he's a Bitcoiner, loves the show, loves listening to it, and wanted to share a story, which is what you find when people listen to the show and they're Bitcoiners and something has changed their life. They want to share that story to help someone else out. And he came on and said, so we had a preliminary call. He said, I want to talk about vitamin B3, specifically niacin, and how it's cured my crippling psoriasis. What would you call it? Eczema, whatever. It all comes under
skin stuff,
skin disease, which he had been trying to cure for ever since he was like 3, 4, or 5 years of age.
What did you say? B3.
That's what niacin is. Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So he takes me down the rabbit hole and tells me his complete life story of having to face big pharma, medical doctors, that he's tried every single cream, every single pill, to the point of almost just like, right, I'm just going to have to give up because I'm just going to have itchy bastard skin for the rest of my life, and that's just tough for me. But then, of course, you start seeing it in your kids as well, and that's not cool. So he started going down the rabbit hole himself of this niacin, and he found Dr. Dimitri Katz and his research, and started taking the niacin and started following the protocol. And within a month, if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to go back and listen to the episode. Within a month, he started seeing incredible results. And what happens with the vitamin B3, the way he explained it to me, and I've had Dimitri on since, that's probably the one you've listened to. It's almost 4 hours, and the dude's mind fires off in all kinds of different places. But he's done this incredibly deep research at a university in the US. I can't remember the exact one. And basically, what happens is, in my layman's term understanding, is that vitamin B3, as soon as you take it, you should take it, right? You have
these. What have you passed over to me here? Am I going to start tripping on these?
What you have there is a full flush in the slightly smaller pill, in a capsule form. Is that's the niacin. The slightly larger one is glutamine, L-glutamine, and Dimitri. Now, what you want to get straight into it? I would dilute that. I personally would open the. This is what I do. I open the pills.
The pill open. This is
you just pull them open. It's
drug paraphernalia.
Right,
let's get open this bottle.
It's a It's a bovine capsule, gel capsule. So
this big one here. If
you were to take that in the form it's in now, in this capsule, it would get to your gut, and then the capsule would start breaking down.
How much of it do you want it to take?
There's a lot, man. Just drop it in. Do you have a glass? You could even just put it in a little glass.
No, I'm going to go.
Oh, you're going to do it that way. All right.
Snort it.
And then the other one?
Yeah, it's better snorted for sure. What, take that apart as well?
Yeah.
So you say I should be taking all these kind of pills apart because, like, those are the same, right?
Yeah. So what you have here is what we would call a shitcoin in the world of Bitcoin, and so you've got flush-free niacin, which is not what you want. You want full flush niacin, which is best purchased from purebulk.com, and you can get the powder form, or you can get the form I've just given you here. Yeah. Go on, just get it down, Tim. You'll be fine.
I've heard.
So what you're going to experience probably in the next 10 minutes or so
is a flush.
And that flush, why is that happening? So the flush is happening because of vasodilation. What's happening now is all of your veins and all of your capillaries, once niacin and the glutamine, they go together, according to Dr. Dimitri Katz research, that the glutamine and the niacin are like a husband and wife. They work together, and it's the best way for absorption into your bloodstream. He's since updated that protocol, in case Dimitri ever listens to this, to use N-acetylglutamine.
Bloody hell, mate.
So anyway, the vasodilation. What's happening? All your capillaries, arteries, veins are all about to slightly open a little bit, and this is going to completely up your blood flow, and it's going to start clearing out all of the plaque and all of the free radicals and all of the gunk that's been held up in those pathways for all of these years. And it also, again, according to Dimitri's work, is going to help with the synapses and neurons in your brain. It's going to open all of those up as well. So he's convinced this is the best way for us to start tackling Alzheimer's and other, diseases such as dementia, as well as any kind of blood-related disease. He can link it to sorting out autoimmune diseases, gut problems. It's truly amazing. And skin, obviously, you said earlier that you feel better with your skin. This is one of the first things people notice.
It's like, what it is with the skin is it's a bit like when you go on when you go on your best summer holiday ever, and you notice you've got a nice tan and you've got a glow, and or when your wife is pregnant and she's like glowing and all that kind of stuff. It's that kind of glow. It's necessarily hard to put your finger on what it actually is, but I saw it in my reflection. I looked at myself and I thought, you're exuding something that you sometimes don't. Sometimes, you get up in the morning, you look in the mirror and you're like, Jesus, look at the state of you. Yep. You're a 52-year-old man. You should be, don't let yourself go, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Everyone said the same. I have a Signal group. So since I released those podcasts, people have been DMing me or DMing Michael, the original guy that came on, the other Bitcoiner. And it's like, right, man, we got to set up a Signal group or something. So you've just been added, as you know. So there's now 52 members in there. And everybody's updating every single day. I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, I'm feeling this. And we're all cross-reffing it and riffing with each other and trying to figure out what's going on. But we're all feeling incredible, like the incredible sharpness of mind. I told you it improves my vision like ridiculously. And I don't have bad eyes. I have perfect vision. I don't need to wear glasses, but I feel an improvement and a clearness.
Right. I've just remembered another, like I've been doing this regime now for like 3 months, I think, or 4 months maybe. Another thing I noticed, so I've got very particular eyesight, not very good, very short-sighted, as I was explaining at breakfast, a little bit of a squint. And as I've got older, as soon as I get tired, my eyes start going out of focus. Which can, like if you're driving late at night, I find myself just seeing double vision. I have to pull over. That stopped. Yeah. I wonder if I don't know what it's. I mean,
imagine what that would be like on the full flush, rather than the flush free that you have there.
I'll tell you in 10 minutes, mate. What's that film when the guy takes a pill? Bradley Cooper keeps taking a pill and he gets more and more intelligent and more. Oh, I can feel it now.
You've already felt it.
Yeah,
Are you feeling it around your eyes?
Yeah. It's like a kind of heat and like
that's where I feel it first.
A little bit like you're about to sneeze because of pepper.
Right. Yeah. So you'll feel it. Some people feel it around the top of their skull.
Oh no, it's
right around the
sinuses.
Right. Okay. Have you ever had problems with your sinuses? Do you suffer with hay fever, allergies, or anything like that?
Yes, I do.
Right. So the niacin knows where to go. This is what's crazy about it. It knows where to go first.
Around here as well.
Right, around your chest.
Lungs,
right, okay.
Lungs. Throat.
All right, it's starting to kick in. So unfortunately, I brought with me 2 glutamine pills, so I would have joined you in the flush. But I think what happened yesterday, I've mixed the pills up, and yesterday I took 2 niacin. That's why I showed you the picture of me flushing in the cab on the way to the Prague. So to the conference.
I can feel definitely. So the flushing, like, what do you know though about the long term of this? I mean, obviously, with anything like this, a detractor would say, "Look, it's all very well, but have you got any idea what you're doing?
What you're doing to yourself?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What you're doing to yourself is putting a vitamin inside you, and
but it's having a strong effect. I mean,
and why? Right? Why are we feeling such strong effect? And where does vitamin B3 come from naturally in our diet? Originally, when we were eating a lot of organ meat, you probably grew up eating bacon and liver and bacon pie, and there was a lot more of that kind of organ meat in. You're feeling it now in your fingers?
I'm all over, man.
Yeah.
It started from the inside. Like I say, it started from my sinuses, went out. It's coming down my arms now.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't expect that from a vitamin pill.
No.
I would be thinking, okay, taking some psychedelics, taking something strong. This is an instant reaction, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's crazy.
But like, tell me what this is actually. You described it as kind of like freeing up the. I don't know.
You're opening up all of your channels that carries your blood around your body, and so one example, I had something cured for me that I didn't know was going to happen. Like you. I held these podcasts. I was intrigued. I bought the exact product that they told me to buy, advised me to buy, and I started taking it. And it was probably after, when did I start? January, maybe February. So it's still very cold outside. We live in France. And in the wintertime, it gets bitterly cold. And I still have to get up early in the morning to drive my daughter out down to the local lycée where she was studying for exams. And I would get out in the morning, and as soon as I touched my steering wheel, one or two of my fingers would just drain of blood. They would just go completely white. Some people call it dead man syndrome. It's otherwise known as Raynaud's syndrome, where you just have these in your extremities. It's gone, completely white. It would happen in my toes as well. And then I realized in March or April that, hang on a minute, this isn't happening anymore. This is crazy. And I would stand over in the field and watch my son play football in the cold, and it always used to happen. So I checked this with Dimitri, and I said, I think my Raynaud's is gone. He's like, yeah, dude, of course. Why? I mean, come on, think about it. What you're doing is, with the vasodilation, you're opening up all of these channels. So maybe there was some kind of blockage to these fingers, whatever, old blood, free radicals, whatever has been in your system for 46 years has now been opened up and easily has been allowed to flush through. And now your body's dealt with it, and that's gone from your body. And now my fingers are completely fine. My toes are completely fine. I've not had another... You're stroking your arm there.
It's a real hot flush.
Yeah.
Does this happen every single time you take it?
It gets easier. It gets easier on you. So these flush-free ones that you've got, you wouldn't have had such a
I never
result.
felt. I never felt anything.
Okay. Yeah. So
they're like slow release. I take it, and you don't rate those.
No, that you want like anything. You want the original. You want the most purest form of.
It's all. I mean, it's over my back now, around here and stuff.
Yeah,
that's intense from a vitamin.
Yeah,
I would expect that of a quite strong, class A drug.
Do you want to go down the dark rabbit hole that Dimitri took me down?
Go on.
Okay, so Dimitri was doing these studies at doctorate level, whatever they call it over there in the States, where
PhD,
PhD or one above.
We'd call it a PhD, doctorate.
Okay, so fully funded to do this deep research and work on the effects of niacin on the body and the best way to administer it and get it into us. And all of the research he was trying to do, he was obviously trying to look around, find other researchers, work on their research. And there's a guy called Andrew Saul who's written a book called Niacin, The Real Story. And Andrew Saul, he pulls on Dr. Abram Hoffer's work, who was doing all of this studies around in the 50s, 60s, 70s, I believe. An incredible book. That's the one MTC read, and Badders and all of these other guys that are like, oh my God, click, I've got to go and give this a try. But what Dimitri found is another researcher by the name of Willard Krell, Krehl. Google that name. Nothing comes up. Nothing. He's a ghost on the internet. But in the deepest research that Dimitri was doing, where you get behind the paywall of these research papers that only someone of his level at a certain university with certain rights, and obviously you pay to get to that research, he found all of this work. He's like, oh, this is a treasure trove of information, and started following his research and trying to double test what he was talking about back in the 40s and 50s when he was doing this. Now, Krell was doing all of this in Germany. Now, what's interesting about that is he was moved from Germany to the US, fully funded to go and carry on his research in an American university, fully funded by, I'm sure you can guess the name.
What, Bill and Melinda Gates? No.
Back in the 50s.
Pfizer?
Rockefeller.
Oh, Rockefeller, sorry.
Right. So all of this research was being done. It was being done, and all of the research was being put out there, but only to a certain amount of people, the people that were funding his research. Now, why was that all being kept secret from us? Why are we now as humans completely de-engineered? Like Dimitri will tell you, we almost have like zero from birth. We almost have zero vitamin B3 in us, which generations ago, 4 or 5 generations ago, you'd have been born and there would have been way more vitamin B3 in our system, and that would have been upheld by the diet, the organ meats and the fats and the raw milk and eggs, for example. There would be the glutamine side of it, and the B3 would be coming from the red meat and the organ meats. Those 3 food groups, funny enough, have been completely villainized if you look back through history that we've been around. The attack on eggs, the attack on milk. I mean, milk's just white water these days, right? Raw milk is freaking illegal. like in America or Canada. And we don't eat liver and bacon pie anymore, right? We grew up eating that stuff. Do you remember? It's weird. So if we're depleted of vitamin B3, and vitamin B3 is fixing all of these things that people are suffering with, especially Alzheimer's, which is on the rise, as we know, and cancers, which are on the rise, as we know, and just things like skin diseases, like my Raynaud's, it's all linked. You can pretty much figure out, what a great business plan for someone to have all of that research, all of that knowledge, and to keep that off the shelves and out of the narrative. So we do get those things. So we have to buy the drugs that are made by the Pfizers of this world. And now we're just two conspiracy theorists sitting in a room, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, you could call it a conspiracy, or you could just say you're being, and you're just looking at the world and deciphering the incentives to do certain things. Mm-hmm. And the incentive...
And look at the money. Right?
Exactly.
Follow the money. If everybody's sick and buying your drugs, and everybody's sick because of the fact that the research that they need to keep themselves healthy has been guarded by you and locked up and out of the narrative really being, I mean, when you go to America, like the amount of people, almost everyone's on some kind of prescription drug.
Yeah, you do notice.
It's unreal.
You notice it most when you turn the telly on, and almost 75% of the ads are for pharmaceuticals. Because I couldn't believe that when I saw it for the first time, and I've been beat recently. It's the same. They are pumping that stuff out at you, full on, all the time. And yeah, it's like I think it's, I don't know. Apparently not as bad in the UK. I mean, I don't really take any drugs. I think I take a paracetamol. And if a doctor told me you need to take this drug for the rest of your life, I would be suspicious right from the start.
Statins.
What's that?
Statins is what people... It's like the biggest scam out there on the pharmaceutical front.
What are they?
Statins are this wonder drug, in air quotes, that are going to keep... Like my father's been taking statins from his mid-40s probably, because... you got high cholesterol, you got high blood pressure, we're going to have to put you on statins because that's what's going to keep you alive, because this will stop you having a heart attack, basically. And they're still pushing this to this day. And Saifedean has done a lot of work on this. He's had a couple of guys talking about statins on his show. And it's just unbelievable when you... It's like so many of the things we end up talking about. When you see it, you cannot unsee it, because when you see the incentive... Like the incentive is always money and power and monopoly. Then you can just, okay, click, 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 click. Right, okay, yeah, of course that makes sense.
Well, I'm going to talk about that because I think it's quite interesting that you began life as a Bitcoiner. You had an old life and a new life, didn't you? Your old life was like a lot of people working in Forex trading and all that kind of stuff, wasn't it? Or was it gold or Forex? I can't remember.
No, yeah, it was foreign exchange.
Foreign exchange,
I joined the foreign exchange markets in 1995, following my father's footsteps into the golden, streets of London, like every other young, impressionable man that comes from Essex.
Right, but what's funny about your journey is you went from that side, you jumped over the fence. I suppose traveling with your family, and that was all part of it. But then you became a Bitcoiner, started a podcast, and now you're into all kinds of... It's almost like you're into anything that seems wrong. Like, I think Bitcoin switches you on often to what's wrong out there, what's unfair, this is wrong, this is not... And then all of a sudden, there's a whole world of wrongness everywhere. Mm-hmm. And you see, I mean, what are the big ones currently in your life? The big wrongs, apart from the money, because like we've talked about Bitcoin a lot, but I'm going to guess it's homeschooling is one of them, unschooling is one of them. Mm-hmm. Every aspect of a society where we're getting stuff wrong,
Yeah, the so I had an 18-year career in foreign exchange markets. 15 years of that were in Singapore, and in 2013 back end of 2013, I read The 4 Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, which made me realize I was living a deferred lifestyle. I was sitting at my desk every morning, switching my computer on and just thinking to myself, just another 15 years, or just another 20 years, whatever.
Did you really think like that?
Yeah, when can I get out of this chair? When is this all over? When can I go and live? When can I be outside? When can I be with my family? When can I go and travel? What are the things I want to do? When can I spend the day on the golf course? Rather than, why am I a lodger in my own home? Which is basically what you were. You were just running on that hamster wheel 1,000 miles an hour to stand still. Come the end of the month.
Quick flush report, by the way.
Flush up.
Right down in my legs now. Yeah. Honestly. It's intense, man.
Yeah.
It's almost making me just trip out. It's a little bit like a trip, beginning of a trip. I'm just kind of like, you could just talk and I'm being bathed in words. I'm just like, yeah, cool, man. It's nice. Go on. So anyway,
then once I realized I needed to make because that hit me smack in the face, because we had the 4 kids at home, aged 8, 6, and 2 3-year-old twins at that point, and that made me realize, right, we got to change. We can't go on like this, and I quit, and we took the kids out of school and we started traveling with them, just to completely decompress. So what we thought would be about 9 months of traveling around the world turned into 2.5 years. And I've written my book about it, that experience, and how I believe anybody else that is trapped and is thinking about, taking off and doing something with their kids and their family and spending more time with each other is completely possible, as you found out when you did it with your wife and 3 kids as well. So I started falling down the rabbit hole of, they didn't need to be in a classroom with 29 strangers to be, force-fed knowledge, to be learning, in air quotes. Like, they're learning around me. I can see the difference. I can see what they're doing, what they're saying. I can see the experience that they're having and how that's affecting their brainwaves and everything. And it just started completely exposing to me the nature of the education system and what it's doing to kids, to all of us, how it's programmed us, our behavior. Even to this day, you still have to kind of deprogram yourself and stop thinking in the way that you were programmed to think when you were going through that institution. From, we grew up in the UK, we probably went off at the age of 5, right? Mm-hmm. But that's getting earlier and earlier. So when you start seeing that and unpacking it, and doing further research and reading about the topic, just pick up a John Taylor Gatto book. He's the one that really starts blowing the lid off of this, because he was a state school teacher in the US for 30 years, and he won numerous awards throughout his career. And one day just woke up and come to like the realization, he's like, oh my God, I don't want to hurt kids anymore. Like, he realized what he had been trained to do. So he started writing about it, and his first article was posted in the Washington Post, and it's called I Quit, I Think. And it's a great article, and that's what really started that snowball effect for him and his own work, but others that followed behind him, people like Sir Ken Robinson and Peter Gray and Naomi Fisher, have all done incredible work on like the destructive nature of that institution and how it was set up and why it was set up and the damage it's doing. And when, again, Tim, we've talked about this, when you see it, you can't unsee it. And then when you follow the incentives, it all makes complete sense how it's been set up and why.
The other thing about homeschooling and unschooling and all that world, I think, is once you start spending time amongst people who don't subscribe to the idea of sending your kids to school, it does become quickly apparent that, oh yeah, it's just some invented thing, school. It's just something that someone invented, and now everyone goes to school, and this is how you learn. And it's very deeply ingrained, very deeply ingrained. The pressure and the urge to want to send your kids to school to get ahead in life.
Oh yeah.
It's like, or like the demand for education, really, like, everyone needs to be educated.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very difficult one to resist.
And don't forget, Tim, free education is a human right.
Right, exactly.
What, you don't like human rights? Well, tell me, what about those poor children in Africa that don't have a school? Like, what are you going to say to them? They would beg to have the same opportunities as you. These narratives that come at you every single time, when you're the parent that like goes up against the system and says, something's up here. My kid is not right. This isn't the person that I know that they should be, because that's what school does. It starts. All right, let's wind it back. Let's think about 5 years of age. If two government officials were to turn up on your doorstep on your daughter's 5th birthday and say to you, we have it on good authority, because we have the consensus in front of us, that there is a young lady in here that's going to be turning 5 today. You're like, yes, that's correct. Right, okay. So as of September, she's going to have to come with us, and she's going to have to wear this, and they're going to hand you the uniform. And she's going to stay in here for 8 hours a day. We're going to have the doors locked. You're going to have to bring her. We'll take her off you. We'll lock the doors afterwards. You walk one way, they walk the other. We're going to put them in a room with 29 other people, completely at random. Maybe we might do it by alphabetical order. We don't know yet, but it would be at random. And then they're going to go in with an adult who's going to sit them down and teach them. That's not learning. Teaching and learning are two completely different things.
That's also a stranger.
Yes.
I mean, that's quite that stands out most to me, is because I'm a dad. I'm teaching my kids, and that's the best form of teaching. We know, because you have your kid's best interest at heart, 100%. It's one-on-one. It's like intensely focused on your kids. That, yes. I mean,
the trauma there, which is what Naomi Fisher talks about, the trauma of that, but people were doing this. What's really sick now, because everybody has to live on a 2-income wage, again, back to the money, we have women that are having babies and then giving them up after their permitted maternity leave.
12 months.
Whatever that is. Yeah, it might be, depending again on which country you live in. Is it 3 months? Is it 12 months? Is it 18 months? Is it 2 years? It can vary, right? Let's just say, for example, 1 year. You get to spend 1 year with your baby, and then you've got to give it over to a nanny or a daycare, because you've got to get back to work. Because not only is your career on the line, which you've been gaslit into believing, you've got to have all of the equal opportunities and all of that kind of stuff. We can go down that route if you want. But at the end of the day, you're giving up your baby to a complete stranger at the age of 1, because society believes you should be at work, earning your money, paying your taxes. That is so damaging. That is trauma. That's pure trauma, which is going to be carried in that person's life, that baby's life, into adulthood. And that the trauma doesn't stop there. Because then at the age of 3, maybe you're going to kindergarten or whatever they call it, and it feels nice and fuzzy and whatever else. But yeah, what do they do? Well, the first thing they have them do is, okay, everybody, here are the rules. Line up at the door, everybody in their room, go find your peg, go find your name. Oh, it's teaching them to read. They can recognize their name. No, it's not. It's teaching them order. It's teaching them to just step by step, by step, by step. Hang your coat up, hang your bag out, take your water out, go to your desk, go to your place. Don't fight with Timmy, no pushing, all of this kind of stuff. And it's all just insidious programming. Now, here's the really sick thing, the really sick trick that has been pulled. And it's been pulled on the poor teachers and those people that are in these facilities, let's call them schools or daycare or whatever else. Why are they doing it, these people? Because they feel that this is something within them. They want to mentor children. They want to help children. They want to tutor children. They want to guide children, right? Some people have that calling. You and I, we didn't. We have different callings, but this is their calling in life. They want to be around kids. They want to see them flourish. They want to help them. Beautiful, right? But they've been programmed through their training to actually do the reverse to kids. And that's a really dark place for a teacher or someone that works with kids in these institutions to come to realize. And that's what happened to John Taylor Gatto. That's why I plead with people to read his work, because he is an excellent writer and orator. You can find his videos as well. And once he realized the trick that had been pulled on him, he couldn't unsee it. And he dedicated the rest of his life to flight. He never turned down one speaking engagement, ever. He went to every single speaking engagement, no matter how big or how small, because he was so dedicated to get that message out there. Now, his book, his tome, is called the Underground, the history of the underground history of the American education system. That's huge. I mean, dive into that if you want, but the more approachable books, first of all, his articles are very approachable, but Dumbing Us Down is a very short, easy read, and Weapons of Mass Instruction is a killer book as well, and you can find them on Audible, some of these books.
What does he advocate for now then in reality? Like homeschooling or?
Well, yeah, sadly, John passed away, but he was a huge advocate of natural learning, self-directed education, unschooling, homeschooling, just leaving the kids alone, basically. A huge advocate of, like Peter Gray and like Naomi Fisher, the understanding that that child is learning, you're learning, I'm learning, but the institution that we get put in shuts that learning down. We don't have a love of learning anymore until we found Bitcoin, possibly. When I talk to people that have found Bitcoin, all of a sudden, it's the most intellectually stimulated they've ever been in their life, because something is happening, their brain is being rewired, all of these dots are falling into place. They realized how they've been conditioned, they realized how they've been socially engineered, and they realize what's actually wrong with society, because it's all coming back to the currency that we have been forced to use, that medium of exchange, our species being the only species on this planet that uses a medium of exchange to express value to one another. That's how we evolved. And if that medium of exchange is completely manipulated, completely controlled, at a complete whim by people in centralized positions of power, they can move their interest rates whenever they want. That affects all of us. That affects our behavior. That affects how we interact with each other. And it affects absolutely everything. And I can't remember how I got onto that tangent. We're talking about incentives again.
Well, yeah. I mean, I want to keep talking about schooling because I think having been through the process of homeschooling and then, in my case, realizing that Liz is not hugely predisposed to teaching the kids at home. She doesn't enjoy it. Therefore, the kids have gone back to school. But I've already noticed now that we talk with our kids differently. In the past, I would have been, come on, do well at school.
Yep.
Now I'm like, you want to use ChatGPT to hack the school system? Go right ahead. Just like you're there for a reason, but any way you can hack it, beat the system, cut corners, do all this, that's fine. And that's been my journey. And I'm in a way, I'm disappointed that the kids aren't like, I do look at your two, especially, Lauren, and think that you've got a really nice way of working there. You bring them with you everywhere you go. The learning is constant, but it's a big ask, really.
Yeah. So this idea of home school, right? That's school at home. The idea that if you take your kids out of school, then all right, to make sure that they're going to keep up with everybody else, which again is just a disgusting comparative, like absolute mind-numbing result of the system, which is indoctrinating us to be competing against our classmates all of the time, right? It's just bred, compete. Why? Because it keeps us divided. It's just a tool to keep us divided from the very beginning, for you to believe that you're slightly better than this, that, and the other one, and you're always in competition with somebody. And now you can't take that style of teaching from the classroom to the home, it doesn't work. And I remember when Claire and I first took the kids out of the schooling system to go on the travels, the things that people were saying is like, well, you're going to damage your kids. You're being irresponsible parents. They're never going to be able to keep up. How are they going to ever get a job? They're never going to be able to socialize. People actually believe that you're getting all of these things in a classroom with 30 strangers and one adult. Now, what we did at the beginning was the classic mistake that any first-time homeschooler is ever going to make. We sat down and we made a timetable. Like, right, okay, between 9 and 11, I'll take Lauren and Samuel, and I'll just do a little bit of spelling with them and some reading and whatever else. They were like 3, man. Like, what are we doing putting 3-year-old twins on a timetable? Like, okay, sit down, books out. Complete nonsense. And you take Sophia and Lauren, you do spelling with Sophia and a little bit of math, and then with Caitlin, maybe we can get her to do some kind of project on, I know, go drop a hoop in the garden and tell us how many insects. What were we thinking? We were trying to just replicate a school setting in the home. And not only that, in a different country, because we were traveling, and it just didn't work, man. It was a nightmare. Meltdowns, pushbacks, shouting matches. So now I'm trying to be a father, a teacher, a friend. Sometimes your kids just want to play with you as a friend. Like, if I'm playing dolls with my 3-year-old child, am I her father at that point, or am I her friend? Like, you're wearing all of these different caps, and then you've got to turn into like, okay, now I'm the authoritarian. Let's make sure everybody sit down, back straight, books out. Let's get this done. Let's just get this done. Just give me focus for 1 hour so we can get this done, and then we can go and swim in the pool or go to the beach. And total nonsense. So, following the work of Peter Gray, Self-Directed Education, and Naomi Fisher, we just let it all go. We let it all go. No timetables, no nothing. We had the books and stuff. It's like, let's just see what happens. And you could figure out you probably get about an hour or 2 a day where you had a window, and it was different with each of them. And whatever that window was, whenever you could see it, you just grabbed it. And it might have been the window of Lauren crawls off into the corner and picks up a book. You let her alone 10 minutes, then you go and sit next to her, put her on your lap, and you're like, what are you looking at here? And you just sit. Before you know it, an hour's flown past, and you're reading. Like, really reading, and you're discussing things, and you're following her. You're answering the questions, and you're talking about. And then a few hours later, Caitlin might ask a question like, why does this work in that way? And you look at her, and you're like, you know what? I don't know. And that to a kid is so powerful. When a kid sees an adult turn around to you and say, I don't know, let's go jump on the computer and find out together. That never happens in the school. If you ask a question to the teacher, you expect the answer. If the teacher doesn't know the answer, what happens? They shut you down. Stop asking silly questions, just listen. Because of their fear to look stupid in front of the other 29 kids. So the kid that keeps asking the questions, if you were one of those kids, the reason you were getting shut down is because the teacher didn't know, and it was their fear to be, shown up. It's like, no, stop, Johnny, stop. I'll put you in the corner. Go and see the headmaster. Mm-hmm. Just because you're looking for the answer, right? But you can't. So when a kid asks that in a home situation, I'm going to try and take the word school out of homeschool because it's completely a total oxymoron. Yeah, let's go find out. And then they see, oh, hang on a second. Oh, adults don't have the answer to everything. Daddy's learning something exact same time as me. So we're sitting there doing long division together because I couldn't remember how I was taught it. So we're on Khan Academy. We're like, all right, okay, da-da-da-da. See, you see what he did there? She's like, no, I don't know how you did that. I'm like, okay, let's rewind the video. We learned long division together in completely different methods.
Right, which is my experience was the same when we were homeschooling. But I've got a question about that because our strategy then became, look, let's just be as free as we can, but we still have to teach them maths, right?
Yep.
But then when I started teaching them maths, I had that same experience. I had to relearn how to do long division.
Yeah.
But what that taught me was, I'm not using long division.
Nope.
Right. So So do we even need to do that? Like, do we need to even teach maths and English? Like a lot of homeschoolers say, well, let's screw all the projects and stuff they do at school, these things. But like I said, 1 hour in the morning, let's just go through a maths book and teach them. And there are some things like, they were learning about graphs,
right?
Things like that. That seemed good. How do you represent something on a graph? But every single technique they learned on adding and subtracting, long division, multiplication, using pieces of paper and pencils did seem a little bit out of date. Because there's no way I would ever add up in my head. But other than that, you'd go straight to a calculator.
Yeah.
So you're of that opinion that you don't really need to even do any of that stuff.
No, I'm of the opinion that it's going to come naturally to you, or you're going to excel at it when you need to. Like if you need to, right. Math. What is math? Math is truth, right? Pure truth. It's the language of truth. You cannot question it. Once you've done that mathematical kind of equation, it's like you're going to get to that answer. It doesn't matter how you get to that answer, but that's not how they teach you. So I've seen this because my oldest daughter, she's been to the French schooling system. She wanted to get her IB and baccalaureate, whatever they call it. So she's done that, and I've seen the way that they teach math there. They teach it in a completely different way than you would be taught how to do it in America, or how you would be taught to do it in England, or even in Singapore, where she was also learning math at one stage. It's a complete mess for the brain. It doesn't matter how you get to the answer. If the answer is correct, the answer is correct, but she would lose marks on her French exams because she wasn't doing it the way they were forcing her to do it. So and why are we teaching kids from the age of 12? I was with friends in America recently, and I just glanced at their 12-year-old's homework. He's doing the most ridiculous calculus, algebraic, triangles all over the place. And, if you put a triangle in a square, what angle, if you've got X and Y axis, and what angle is, this, if this one is 33 degrees, and what's the hypotenuse? I'm like, what? Why are we forcing a 12-year-old to do this?
Isn't the point of that, though, you're giving options? Like if you become an engineer, for example, in your later life, stuff like that is relevant, I would imagine.
You will need it.
Right.
So if you want to become
aren't you supposed to set kids up in early years with that stuff?
What's actually happening, the reason that they're doing this, is to instill a fear towards mathematics.
Now that definitely sounds like a conspiracy. They're trying to scare you of mathematics.
How many people, hands up, like doing math?
Well, yeah.
How many people have a horrible memory from a classroom of math, being asked on the spot, you, Prince, what's the answer? Alan, what's the answer? Come to the board, write up for me this equation. How many numbers of pi can you remember? We've all been shamed at that point. So, and it's, again, I believe, honestly, why are we teaching kids so young these really complex, like how do you multiply mixed fractions at 11? Like,
no, exactly. The applications of that in life are almost non-existent, especially at that age.
And why are you only allowed to do math on a Wednesday morning for 45 minutes and then on a Thursday afternoon for an hour and a half?
All right, then, look, describe then for me. So your twins are here. Laurel and Samuel, they're here. And this is what I love about the way you operate in your life. It's you bring your kids everywhere. I meet you all around the world, and every single time, at least 1, 2, 3, or 4 of your kids are with you, having the times of their lives. And you're always sort of nudging them to join in with what's going on. And as a result, your twins, how old are they now? 12. We've just all had breakfast together, and they talk to adults as they would talk to 12-year-olds, as they would, they're part of, very well-adjusted children, as I would call them. So what is their actual rest of their life like? Like, what's the structure to their lives? When they get up, are you expecting them to do something, or do they self-direct, or what?
Yeah, that's been a journey in itself. So they've been living this kind of lifestyle probably from the age of 3 when we started traveling. So we traveled for 2.5 years, completely outside of the system. We then started house sitting in France, and we spent 2 months in France. That's the longest we'd sat still for a long time. And we were like, okay, I think we need to slow down, because on average we'd been moving about every 10 days for 2.5 weeks and traveling and carrying all of that gear, getting packed up and off. It's tiring, as you know, right? It's amazing. And what an epic journey. And I want to go again. I want to go next year. We're trying to put the wheels in motion to go for another year-long travel.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, hopefully, mate.
In what kind of direction before we go?
Oh, we'd love to do Central South America. Yeah, love to.
Yeah.
Not been there yet, not touched it. So then they went back to school, right? Because we were in France, Claire and I, we decided, well, I remember, like, right, hypothetical. If you could give one gift to your kids, what would it be? And we both decided number one would be the ability to speak another language. We're like, right, okay, so if we're clear on that, how do we get that done? Immersion. Immersion is the quickest way to that, whether you're a kid or an adult, right? So adults, even a 50-year-old that thinks they can never speak another language, go live in a different country in a working environment, and you'll be speaking that language within 2 or 3 months. We know it's to be true. So that's what we did with the kids. We put them into the school system. That was a real hard one for me. I really did not like going through that process, because
saying goodbye to them at the school gate.
Saying goodbye. But this time they were, how old were they? 6. The youngest was 6. So we were like 6, 8, and 11. Saying goodbye to them, watching them walk away into a situation where they could not communicate with the other kids. As a parent, you're always going to question your decisions, always. I mean, that's just natural. But I knew that this would be such a life-changing moment, developing moment for the next 2 or 3 months for them, that I was comfortable with that decision. And of course, they loved it, and they made a few friends and started picking up the language very, very quickly. Now, my oldest daughter, she's been meeting people at college. They have no idea she's English. They have no idea. She might have a friend for a year, and they'll turn around one day and say, what are you guys talking about? What do you mean? Caitlin, you're English? Yeah. Like, because her French is just like faultless. Like, it's almost native. And so, we achieved what we wanted. When the COVID lockdowns came around, we were obviously everybody at home, and 3 of the kids never went back. Caitlin went back. She wanted to finish her exams. And the other 3 were like, nah, we're done, because we had the experience of homeschooling. The second time around, it wasn't as stressful.
During lockdowns, you mean?
Yeah. But what was going on, like, during the lockdowns was the school at home, which was stressful. Like,
for you guys?
Yeah, because we got emails from the teachers.
Right. I see. Not your own version of it.
No. Emails from the teachers. This is what's expected from you. Make sure you... But, of course, the teachers go straight to the parents, right? Because, the younger ones didn't even have email addresses then. So we pulled them out and said, no, we're not doing this anymore. This is complete nonsense. They can speak the language. Why are we putting them through this? So we pulled them out of school, and we put them on the self-directed education platform, which is now called Kubrio, KUBRIO.com. So that's a self-directed education platform. So this has been their life. This is like a day in the life of Lauren or Samuel. They'll wake up the earliest call that they have.
It's all online.
It's all online, yeah. The earliest call that they currently have would be at 10 o'clock. So they're going to wake up before 10 o'clock naturally anyway. So they're waking up naturally, and I can't tell you how powerful that is to a human. To wake up naturally is huge. We've had that stolen from us as well, right? Most of us have been waking up to an alarm clock since the age of, 5? That's madness. So they wake up naturally. They have some breakfast if they're hungry. They'll make it themselves. Or if not, they will just check their messages on their Kubrio app. and get ready for their call at 10 o'clock, which is just a 30-minute check-in with a facilitator. They don't use the word teachers. A facilitator who is could be anyone from around the world. This particular guy is an English guy living in Germany, and they have a half-hour check-in with him. And they just go through their plans for the week. Okay, guys, what have you got going on? What projects are you working on? What clubs are you joining? Because they can go to the homepage of Kubrio. Like, yeah, I'm joining AI Club, Chat GPT Club. I'm joining Chess Club. I'm joining Math Club, Science Club, English Club, Coding Club. You know, it's all there.
And they classes as well.
Yeah. But again, don't use the word class.
I
use the word club.
I have to relate it all back to the legacy system.
Yeah. So they will choose those. So what happens in this situation? They sit there and they click, sign up, and that hits their calendar, so they know exactly when to be on the call. So it's 2 o'clock on a Monday. So if I ask Lauren at breakfast on 9:30 on a Monday morning, what are you doing today, Lauren? I've got check-in at 10. Then at 11 o'clock, I've got science with Oliver. Then I've got a break for an hour. And then at 1, I've got history mystery with Oliver. And then at 2, I'm like, oh, you got a busy day today. Yeah, but I got it's not so busy on Thursday afternoon. So they've started developing their own timetable. And this is on their time, not the opposite, where you're given a timetable at school. You need to be here at 9. Then 9:45, you've got to shuffle down that corridor and get here for 9:48. And then you've got this, that, and the other thing, blah, blah, blah. It's all planned for you. This is a complete opposite way that they're living their life.
You're not telling them, you're not pushing them in any direction at all. You're not looking at their itinerary going, why don't you do a bit of this? Why don't you?
Yeah, of course. Always having conversations. Because I would say, I can, as a parent, I have my own dashboard and I can look and I'm like, oh, that, like, one guy was doing a stand-up comedy club. The idea being, how do you present yourself? And like a bit of a Toastmasters type thing, but with a slight little twist on it. I was thinking, I would love to have done that when I was 12. Like, guys, sign up for the comedy club. They're like, huh? No, I'm not doing that. I'm like, why? Why wouldn't you do that? And then I feel I have to catch myself, because now I'm being a forceful pressure. Like, why would I force them to do that? Because that is my bias. So there are some things where you're like, guys, come on. This is too heavy on the side of, whatever.
You're missing something.
You plug into an English club for this month, please. Yeah. Do some poetry. I hate poetry. But my wife convinced Lauren, just do some poetry. Do like it. And of course, it's fun. It's not sitting there like studying archaic old poems from... They were damaged in the system, in the French system. This is what they did in the French system to them at 8. Once a week, you had to bring home a poem from like the 1700s in French and learn it off by heart, on the off chance that you were the kid picked on a Friday morning by the authority in the room to stand up in front of everybody else and recite that poem. Total trauma every week, mate. Tears. Tears. Yeah. Like, and when you see that reaction in your child, is like, oh, have you learnt your poem? And then they just, like, the bottom lip goes and they, I've been trying, I just can't remember. You're like, dude, just seriously, what is going on? Just chill out. We can help you. But it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick in my mind. I can't get it. And he's like, okay, yeah, why would you remember a poem in French about a squirrel that was written in like 1742? Why are we still putting that on kids? And it's just this idea of rote memory. I love what Sir Ken Robinson said. His quote, he's like, when he was talking about the rise of ADHD in the classrooms and how we need to battle it, and how Ritalin is this wonder drug for parents that is going to make their kids sit still, and it's going to, that's going to be fine now. They're going to be good in the system. Now they're going to be able to go on and get a job and all of this kind of stuff. Again, disgusting. So Ken Robinson, like, if you ask an 8-year-old to sit down for 7 to 8 hours a day and perform low-grade clerical work, what do you think the outcome is going to be? do you think there's going to be a little bit of fidgeting or a little bit of, looking out of the window, whatever it is that you get punished for doing? And we're doing that to kids 5 hours a day for 46 weeks out of the year, whatever it is. That's sick. That is child abuse.
With your self-directed education, like the way you were describing Lauren and Samuel, what they're doing now, do you ever find that if you stepped away completely, do you think they'd end up doing nothing, or what do you think they would? If you really stepped away, what do you think they would end up doing?
Yeah, this is. I would love to do this. I would love to do it. Just completely get out of their way. I can't, because there's that niggling thing. I've not managed to completely deprogram myself, and Claire can't. So it just ruin our marriage, right? That would be over, and that's far worse than anything that the kids could ever want to see happen, right? But
what do you predict they would do?
So Peter Gray talks about this in his book Free to Learn, and when he talks about the Sudbury Valley School that was set up in Massachusetts, and there was one kid, and that's the ethos. The ethos is the school is here, open doors. You have to pay, obviously, if you sign up, but it's open doors, meaning there's no curriculum. You come if you want to come. It's opt-in. But if you come, we're going to be there for you. If you come and you want to learn a musical instrument, there's a room over here, and there's someone that's going to be able to help you with that musical instrument, or at least put you in touch with someone, or find the right YouTube video or whatever to help you learn that instrument. And you can lose yourself in that instrument for 6 weeks. Maybe you hate it and you walk away from it and you go do something else. And in his story in his book was this kid just wanted to go and fish in the pond on the property every day. Now, you and I, and probably most people listening to this, are going to think, okay, but he's got to come in and do a little bit
of
maths. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
It's where you go straight to, isn't it?
Yeah, well, maths and English.
Right, there you go. That's our own conditioning. That's our own programming. But what happens there is they don't interfere. So the dude just goes and fishes for like a year or two. And think about what's going on. What is actually going on in his brain? What is happening whilst he's just sitting there? It's like meditation, I suppose, or some form of meditation, as he's going through his own mind, trying to figure out what is his area, what is his reason for living, why is he on this planet? Yeah. What is he here to do? What is he here to achieve? Now, I can't remember the exact end of the story of what he went on to do or become, because Peter then, he finds like 20 odd students that went through this and brings back their stories. And let's just say, for example, he went off to be some kind of engineer or whatever. Just suddenly had the epiphany one day, sitting at, right, okay, it's enough of the fishing. This is what I need to go and learn. And off he goes. And as we know, when you want to learn something, learn in the actual real definition of the word learn, you can't stop. The amount of hours that we've spent learning about Bitcoin, sorry to bring that word up again, but this is what has fundamentally changed our lives and our thinking, is, Tim, you and I would have sat down. I can't remember. I couldn't even tell you how many hours I've spent learning this stuff. I've got books all over the place. I've never read so many books in my life. And if I'm not reading a book, I'm listening to a book. And I cannot switch it off. It's impossible to switch off. Whereas at school, you're the complete opposite. You open a textbook. You've most people probably left school. How many books did you read after you left school?
After I left? Well, I did used to read a fair bit. Nothing, but as soon as I became interested in something,
right,
I would just go and read about it.
Yeah,
I didn't look out for a new book each week or whatever like that.
Because most people associate books with textbooks from the age of 5.
The funny thing about Bitcoin as well, actually, and this is going back to our discussion on teaching kids about maths. I do find myself, because I speak to my kids about Bitcoin, obviously, and I do find that I had to teach them from a young age about decimals. which actually, prior to Bitcoin may have been one of those other aspects of maths that you think, why am I bothering to teach my kids this? But now, 0.01 BTC, 0.1, why is 0.1 1/10? And I found myself, as I was teaching them, I was like, yeah, I didn't really learn this stuff in a formulaic way. I just learned it because I'm using 0.1, 0.2, in constantly in life when you're talking about these kind of things. And it was actually quite a difficult thing to explain to my kids why, for example, a half was 0.5.
Yeah.
Why wasn't it 0.2? Because there was a 2 in it. And things like that. And I was like, well, yeah, good point. And then you get into pie charts, and then you get into, and then you actually go on a journey of learning rather than what I find with school and the textbooks is you learn a methodology. And then in that methodology, you rely on the understanding of the methodology without the kind of real deep understanding of what is a half of something. It's not 1 divided by 2 as you write it. So then when you multiply 2 halves, why do you get half times a half? Why do you get a quarter? Why don't you get something else? And that's been my understanding about teaching or education, is that there's a formulaic way of doing it, which is where you teach a methodology, which is also useful. But in a way, computers are doing away with this methodology now, because you don't really need to know how to multiply 2 decimals together. But you do need to know why the result you get is what it is. And that they don't tend to teach you that at school. They go straight to the method,
Yeah, because it's, and again, this is where the teachers they're just as trapped, mate. That teacher's got 45 minutes to get decimals in 30 heads. Right, this is the method that the curriculum uses. Follow this method. And we're moving on, and you better get it, because we're moving on to fractions next week. It doesn't make sense. And that teacher doesn't want to teach that way. That teacher, I can't imagine how stressed they get, how sad they are that they cannot sit down, because they know they would much rather sit down for 45 minutes with each individual person and figure out the way they learn and arm them with the tools that they need to master that skill. Some might get it in the 45 minutes, some might need 3 hours, but that is not available in the system that we have today.
I'm just trying to imagine what the perfect scenario is now, because there's one side of me that thinks, okay, go back 150 years. Where I live now in Wales, you grew up on a farm. You didn't go to school. You just grew up on a farm because you were becoming a farmer. And your education was learning how to just live, how to animal husbandry, all those aspects of life, which set you up in a very good way for being an adult in that same world. And fast forward to now, I still live in this, I live in a place where that would have happened 150 years ago. But now, if you want to freely educate your kids, you have all these options like you use online. You have this immense amount of information. And actually the theory of sending your kids to school is now becoming just not nonsensical. And so what do you think the best scenario is? Do you think you've nailed the best scenario the way you're doing it with your twins now? Like, giving them the freedom, but giving them the access to, hardcore information and teachers. I mean, who are the teachers on Kubrio? Like, are they particularly open-minded teachers, or are they just what?
Yeah, they're teachers that have probably come to the same realization that John Taylor Gatto come to. Like, that they know they want to be around kids, but they know that the system that they were trapped within was not only damaging them personally, because it's an awful system to be in. You know, you those staff rooms are toxic places. You've got the career game, the political game that you're playing. You've got the authority of the head of year or your head of subject or your headmaster, who have got above them the authority of, in the UK, like Ofsted, these people that go around and grade all of these schools. And then above them, you've got the authority of the education minister, who's never been a teacher or ever worked in education, right? Just some square peg in a round hole. And above them, you've got the actual people that are putting these people in place, and that curriculum, in air quotes, it's not a curriculum, I like to say it's an agenda. That agenda gets written and is passed down and forced through the system onto the teachers, onto the kids. This is like, it's a authoritarian regime, completely totalitarian, where the kids are just pure serfs in a system, told to be where, told to do what at all times, and the teachers have been forced into this position of being the gatekeepers to the knowledge that has been predetermined for them to hand down in a certain way, in a certain order. So they can't teach how they want, when they want, or what they're passionate about. Imagine somebody is a history teacher and their studies, they spent 4 years studying the deepest history of 1650s England, because that's their passion. That's what they wanted to learn about. What was the writing? What was the culture? Who was the monarchs, and why? And how did we get there? And what did that lead to? And then they get, right, okay, I'm going to be a history teacher. I've got my certificate. That's brilliant. Right, okay, great. Now you're teaching World War One. No, well, I don't know too much about World War. No, it doesn't matter. All you need to know is tell them that it started in 1914, then it ended in 1918. You have to tell them that. Okay. So you just become a parrot. You're not. You're an empty vessel, and this is going to hurt some people to hear, but those are the people that are being attracted to online education platforms such as Kubrio. Those teachers that have seen that and they want to escape. So they bring their passions. So that's why they bring the clubs. It's up to them. They bring the clubs. They pitch to the kids. They do a little 1.5-minute video. I'm creating this club because one of the clubs made by a guy called Torsten was called Behind the Iron Curtain. He grew up in the communist side of Germany. He grew up behind the wall. So he did and he was a filmmaker. So he made these beautiful films. His classes were packed. He had like 15 kids on these Zoom calls. And when you have that opt-in, 15 kids are there because they want to be there, not because they've been told by some authority, you've got to go to that class. I do remember when we watched that pitch with the kids, Claire and I, we're like, oh, can we, like, you're joining this class, right? Like, yeah, this looks great. Good. Background? Can we just come in and sit? And you find yourself sitting in there and like, yeah, this is awesome. Or just listening. You're like, yeah, oh man, this is so, I've got some questions. I've burning questions to ask him. So the founder, Vlad Stan, who I've had on my podcast talking about the formation of Kubrio, he grew up in communist Romania. And they do an interview together. And they're talking about growing up under communism and what they remember as children, the things they were eating and the things they were being taught at school, the things they were wearing, what everybody else was doing. Incredible, incredible stories. And like, I've got 11-year-old kids sitting there watching this video, like in complete silence, enraptured with it, and just like taking so much from it. And you'll never know what they take from it, right? You'll never know. Like, you and I could read the same book. I would highlight one sentence that just completely changes my way of thinking. You would skip over that and highlight a whole paragraph 100 pages later, which is like, oh my God, that is so relevant to me, and this is going to be something I can build an extra learning experience on.
And like you say, there's such a thing as a good teacher and a bad teacher. Mm-hmm. And if you are teaching something you're passionate about, it's very difficult to be a bad teacher, in my experience, because we get that as adults.
Right.
When you meet someone who's living their dream and being passionate, it's enthralling. It's easy to listen to them. It's easy to soak up what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. And a practical example of that is sales, right? In your corporate career.
Yes.
Right. If you meet a secondhand car salesman, It's just another car, right? He's like, oh yeah, this Volkswagen Passat. Have you seen it? Like, you're like, no, you're not gonna have that. But if you meet people that are working for a startup that is trying to solve a problem that they have truly seen and truly believe in, and they've approached that founder and said, I want to work for you under any circumstances, whatever. I will come and work for you 2 months for free. But I see what you're doing. I understand what you're trying to solve. I can help you reach people. You will be able to tell that story in such a completely different way because you are so completely aligned with that message. Whereas, look at the salespeople we have. Like, people just hire sales guys for whatever. It's like, right, sell these double glazing windows, sell this badminton racket, sell this. And it's just like, that's...
Consensus Network is a good example of that exact thing.
Right.
Was talking to Nico yesterday, and everyone's working all hours of the day, majority for no money at all.
Yeah.
Doing it purely because they want to do it. No one's being instructed to get up and translate books and publish them. And
they're translating books for free.
Yeah, I know.
On their own time.
Yeah, because they believe in the book.
Yes,
yeah.
Because exactly that. They've read this book, it's changed their life. And they're privileged or lucky enough to have read it in English, for example. But they are Spanish, or they're Portuguese, or they're Latvian, or whatever. Some of the languages they've got available blows my mind. So that person sits down and says, right, I've got to, and what Nico would tell you, it's not translating, it's transforming, right? You can't just translate word for word. You have to transform the book into a Latvian mind. So it's taking the work. And I've had the discussion, somebody had it's so humbling, somebody translated my book into Spanish. And he contacted me, he said, hello, Daniel, you don't know me, but I've just finished translating your book. I'm like, what? Huh? Straight on a call. I'm like, well, it's so nice to meet you. I had no idea you were doing this. He's like, well, no, but I read your book. It absolutely blew me away. It's changed the way my wife and I are going to live our life. It's changed the way we're going to bring up our kids. And I just wanted to say, truly thank you. And I've translated the book for Nico. And I said, mate, can I send you something? He's like, no, you've done your part. You've done it.
Lovely.
Thank you. And I've been struggling with trying to what he went on that journey. He's like, oh, I'll just translate the book, and it doesn't work. He's like, no, I've got to transform it into a Spanish mindset, into language. Obviously, different words, different language, but slightly different delivery too. And he said, thank you for forcing me into a complete another different state of mind. So he's carried on that learning through that passion project, and it was very humbling to know that somebody was doing that.
I spoke to Nico yesterday, so I'll direct people to that podcast. But it's a fascinating concept, the old starfish organizations, yes. And I'm in awe of the fact that it even works, because it bucks a massive trend in your understanding of how to run a company, basically. But anyway, back to homeschooling again. The biggest comeback I hear on homeschooling is how you're not socializing your kids.
Yeah.
Okay, so give me the rebuttal of this. You've probably heard it a million times.
It's the number one fad of the homeschooling world, isn't it? And I know I'm preaching to the choir here because you took your own family on a trip around the world and you saw the incredible positive effects that had on your kids and yourself. I remember having Zoom calls with you because we were still doing the Zoom calls with that little Bitcoiner group that we had going on, right?
Yes,
and every now and then you'd drop in and we're like, "Yo, Tim, how
that's
you doing?"
right. Be on a beach somewhere, yeah, on Zoom, yeah. That's it.
And I remember Eileen like, "Tim, you're getting younger by the week."
Thinner and browner.
Yeah,
that's basically.
Yeah.
I wasn't even taking niacin then.
Yeah.
By the way, the flushes have gone.
All right.
I still feel a little bit light and airy, but they've gone.
Okay. Oh shit! What were we talking about?
Socializing your kids.
Yes, socialization. The idea that again, it's such a. This is how we've been programmed to believe that school is the place where you go and make friends, and this is how you learn to socialize, and this is how you learn to operate in a society. You're like, what are you talking about? How could you ever believe that? So let's look again. What society is being formed there? Well, it's certainly not a democratic one. I think we've established that, right? It's totalitarian. It's completely authoritarian. You have no voice. You are just a name on a register. You have absolutely nothing. And if you bring your unique and individual skill set to the classroom and you want to show that and you want to share that, it gets crushed. It gets destroyed. It's completely, you're told to stand in the corner, whatever, right? We've all been there. We know it. And then you just end up conforming just to get through the day. So there's nothing social about that, first of all. So but what about all the friends, Dan, that you make? Like these, I hate to tell you guys.
Especially the other one is all your kids' friends are online. That's the other one.
Right, yeah. So we'll do the socialization thing first at school. And unfortunately, it might trigger a few people as well, because what you'll find is that those friends that you thought were your friends because you had something in common, well, the only thing you had in common was you were locked in the same room for 5 days a week. So what you actually formed was a more of a camaraderie just to get through, like what you're being subjected to. It's forced association.
Right. Yeah, I never thought of it like that.
Well,
before.
And then if you think about like your recreation time, where you're allowed to walk around that concrete block, which we call a playground.
You're describing a prison, mate. Come on.
Peter Gray, again, describes this again as a prison. And what's different here, actually, he theorizes, he argues that prisoners actually have more freedoms than students. And then you start thinking deeper about it. You're like, maybe he has a point. Because can you put your... are you allowed to go to the toilet during a lesson, right? Or why didn't you go before you came in? It's like, because I was in the math block. Like, it takes me 3.5 minutes to get here and I'm not allowed to run in the corridor. Like, remember these rules? Like, stand in the corner. You're not allowed to go to the toilet. Anyway, whatever. So recreation, is that a social? That's your time to go and play with your friends and whatever else, right? Or do you spend that time just avoiding the 99% of the people that you don't want to be associated with or don't want to run into in case, they start bullying you or whatever? It's not it's not a natural social setting. And it can't ever be a natural social setting because you're forced to go there. It's compulsory that you're there. Mm. And what we found with, we were talking about this again at breakfast, right? How COVID changed us and how we used that time effectively to upskill. And that's where a lot of us were reading the books and learning everything that we've learned. And you realize, are those people that I thought were friends? Because you've changed so significantly, not only from your world travels, but from everything that you've learned and the new people that you've met, that the old people that you thought you were going to be lifelong friends with have just slowly started drifting away for whatever reason. And you can't quite put your finger on it. So were those friends that you had before, in air quotes, was that again a form of forced association? Were they just neighbors? You just happened to be in the same village or town? Were they just other parents of other kids that you just got to know? Or you became friends with them because your kids were spending time with each other? And, so what is actual socialization? It's certainly not what's going on in the schools. And what I said in my book, because I looked at the definition of socialize, to socialize, to mingle in a group of people and have conversation and blah, blah, blah. Or then the other is to be socialized, which is actually what's happening in the schools. You are being socialized. You're being taught to conform. You're being taught to behave in certain ways. And it's, we see the result.
Well, the other thing about the socialization argument is that what I came to realize was that socializing your kids amongst kids who are the same age only is not a good strategy.
It's inhumane.
Yeah, you want your kids to socialize amongst people of all ages. That's the really important thing. And you don't get that at school. You get kids who are almost identical in age to you.
Yeah.
And then you're basically learning from them, which is a terrible idea. You should hear some of the stuff, some of the misunderstandings that my kids come to are astonishing.
Yep.
And they're all sitting there discussing this stuff. You need to be around people that know stuff as well as people that don't know stuff. And that's my largest rebuttal to that is that yes, they have a different social strategy, but they have a better one because they're socializing with a much more diverse group of people. And I think probably, and this was the case with us as well, when you homeschool, one of the first things you do as a parent is you get on Telegram, you get on Facebook, you get on whatever, and you look for the other homeschoolers.
Absolutely.
And then before long, you're having meetings. I mean, you're in Prague and you're meeting some homeschoolers here, aren't you?
Exactly, because one of the kids is on the online education platform that Lauren and Samuel. So one of their friends from the self-directed education platform lives here in Prague. Happens to be his birthday weekend, so we're going to go hang out and have a birthday and do all the good stuff and have that physical interaction, which of course is important, but that doesn't have to be with kids of the same age. You're so right. That is, like I said, is inhumane. Dr. Gabor Mate, you might have heard of him. Okay, so Dr. Gabor Mate is, again, psychologist. He's written a book called Hold On to Your Kids. And I did an episode with a guy called Seb Bunny.
I know Seb.
Yeah. Okay. Go back and listen to that because we met in real life at Liberty in Our Lifetime.
Me too. I met Seb for the first time there as well.
But I'd already known Seb from the interwebs. We'd already had a few DMs, conversations. I'd listened to him on other podcasts, found him to be really interesting. And we got to have a conversation. And he spoke to me after I delivered that talk at Liberty in Our Lifetime about the education system. And he doesn't even have kids, him and his girlfriend, wife, fiance, wherever they are, what stage they are in their relationship. And he said, man, you just nailed that. And I will never, ever send my kids to a state school. And he quoted something. And I said, you got that from Gabor Mate? He's like, yeah, hold on to your kids. I'm like, we need to do a podcast about that book. So we did. And he's very deeply aligned with it because of his own childhood. He could see, he's reading the book, he could see himself in what Gabor Mate was talking about. And it's your point, being brought up around people that are exactly the same age as you, from exactly the same area as well, right? This is nonsense. Like, from the age of, let's say, you're best friends with your neighbor. Best of friends. Growing up, you're running around in the streets together, you're doing all that good stuff. Natural friendship. They just happen to be 18 months older than you. What happens when they go to school? You're dropped, man.
Yeah,
you're dropped. Not only that, you're ignored. Because if you go to the local town and you're walking down the street, they'll cross the road with their friends rather than be seen speaking to a younger person in front of their friends, even though you've known each other for your whole life. It's disgusting.
It doesn't happen in many natural settings either. That's the thing. It's a very forced scenario that, and I've travelled a fair bit around plenty of communities around the world, and when you see a real community, you see a complete mix of everyone in the same space at the same time.
And you've spent time in tribes, right? So you see it.
Yeah.
And this is what Peter Gray based his work on. The anthropological studies of tribes in like the Amazon rainforest or wherever, like real, like remote communities. Well, how do they do it? Like, how are they functioning? How can
There's definitely a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy of it's almost like a hierarchy of respect.
Yes.
But there is never the segregation to the degree that you get. There's more of a natural segregation. So yeah, a bunch of kids will go off and play together.
Yes,
but
different ages.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. There's right. No such. Yeah, there is obviously there's a limit.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a broad selection of kids. All the kids will play together. And that'll mean up to the point where in many societies, you as a child, becomes a point where you take on more responsibility in the group anyway. And that you just make a natural transition then into a sort of different age band. But your role still is in being responsible for what's going on amongst everyone else.
Yes.
And that's the beauty.
Being part of the tribe.
Yeah.
Being part of the community.
Yeah.
And you will find your natural fit in that community, right? Some will become hunters. Some will become weavers. Some will become clothes makers or whatever, right? You can talk about this much more than I can.
Well, yeah. I wouldn't say it necessarily works like that. It's more like, roles are very well defined. But the main difference is the sense of community is huge. It's a huge part of life, and the mixing of age groups is not like specifically, it's just everyone's just there, and they spend more time together. In the same way that if your kids live at home with you and don't go to school, they spend a ton of time with you. Basically. And I think that's the cheat code of bringing up cool kids, right? Is make sure they spend as much time as possible in your family unit.
Yes.
Because you get to basically teach them everything then. And providing, obviously, you're happy for your kids to be a carbon copy of you, or not a carbon copy, but have the sort of like this, be your progeny, let's say, or whatever, then you'll end up with well-adjusted kids. Because, and I've never spoken to my kids like they were kids. You know what I mean? If I'd start talking to them about something, I might change my language a little bit, but I'm not deliberately trying to dumb down my language. And we, my lot, as you do with yours. Lauren was talking about, the pitfalls of the state at breakfast this morning. My kids are the same.
Yeah.
Like, check this one out. This is so funny. Just before I came away, Holly, I love her sense of humour. I got up early. I often get up early in the morning before them, and whoever comes down first, I'm normally the first up, sitting there having a cup of coffee at 6 o'clock in the morning. Holly, my middle child, she came down in the morning. I opened my arms like that, and I went, "Come and pay the tax." It's like, come and pay the hug tax.
Right.
And she said to me, you know what she said? "I thought taxes were bad." And I thought, wow, that is very funny.
Yes.
I love your sense of humor. And she said it as she wasn't, and yeah, I enjoy the fact that we've spent so much time together. And I think as a result, and you don't want to toot your own horn too much, but other people always say, and I know you get this as well, they say, "Oh, your kids are really nice," or they're very well mannered, or they're very, and that seems to be a symptom of families where the focus becomes on the family unit being the solid foundation of of everything. And I think that's also quite necessary if you move a lot, because I've become less of a fan of moving around as the kids have sort of grown. But I know that the best way to mitigate any sort of insecurities amongst your kids, if you are moving quite a bit, is to make sure that they understand that they are anchored in this family unit. And in that case as well, that's also another reason to have as many kids as you can as well, because you really do. You've got 4. It's like a group. You have this support network that and you can tell your kids this. The only people you can really, if you really want to be honest about it, the only people you can ever really rely upon are your immediate family. When it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you got to call someone. If it's your brother, your sister, your mum, or your dad, they're going to answer, they're going to come out, they're going to come for you, and they're going to save you, they're going to help you, they're going to do whatever they can. And no matter who your friends are, at the end of the day, you can never really lean on your friends in the same way, or your colleagues, or whatever. And I think if kids understand that, then they're like, okay, we're cool. We've got this grounding, we've got this foundation. The solid constant in their life is mum, dad, brothers, sisters. You're all in this together, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And certainly, I think it's worked for us, and I think I see it working for a lot of families, because we live in this time now where a number of people, you've done it, I've done it, are thinking, where do we position ourselves in this world? We've got, a kind of unknown future ahead of us. We feel like we've worked a few things out. We've given ourselves a modicum of freedom. We want to retain it. Where do we go, and how do we do it? So what's your strategy these days for positioning yourself in the world, geographically, mentally, whatever,
Yeah, that's a good question, because you're right. You cannot predict the future, right? You can plan for it. You can have an idea of where you want to take it, but you just have no idea what's around the corner. And how do you create more freedom in your life?
Take France, for example. Sorry to butt in.
Yep.
You could say France on one hand, was a super bad decision. They hate homeschoolers.
Yep.
They were pretty hard on lockdowns. What was your...
Exactly. So people ask me all the time, why did you decide to live in France? And the answer is, we didn't. Like, we did not decide. It just happened. It happened naturally. Like I explained, when we were traveling, we so happened to find a house sit. So what's house sitting? It's where you go and look after someone's house for free, but in return, you look after it. So for 2 months in the middle of the beautiful French countryside, rural villages, rolling fields, amazing meat, amazing food, amazing drink, amazing nature, going swimming in wild swimming in lakes and rivers every day throughout summer. It kind of chose us. So that was like, okay, we never planned to live in France. Like, this is weird. Okay, well, but that helped us come to the realization, oh shit, we want to get the kids to learn another language. But now, after lockdowns, like the way I saw France behave, the way I saw the lies that were being told to control the population, how controllable the population are, how nationalistic the population are, how arrogant the people can be. We're lucky in where we live because it's very countryside. We could still go out, but if you even went shopping, you still had to wear a mask and all this kind of crazy stuff. And we had to have the health passes. They were trying to force vaccinations. They were lying on the television saying there's only 4 million people. Macron said to the 4 million people who have not had the vaccine, I will make your lives hell. That's the leader of that country. And it was a complete lie. That figure of 4 million is totally fabricated, complete gaslighting throughout the whole thing. And I remember actually sitting up one night with Claire and thinking, what's our point of exit here? If they literally mandate, like they were doing in Austria, where do we go? What do we do? How do we get out? Where do we drive? Because we probably won't be allowed to fly. Making all of these like unbelievable plans that you could never have predicted 2 years earlier when we were just house sitting in that beautiful place doing what you just cannot, right? So what did that teach me? That taught me that you've got to be as self-sovereign as you possibly can be, and in as many different areas of your life as you can be. So now Caitlin, my oldest, as I explained, she wanted to do the schooling and get the certificates. That's done now. So she's now going to go off, and she's just bought her ticket yesterday, actually. She called me for the credit card number. She's just booked her tickets to go to Thailand. She's flying out to Thailand, I think, in November or December with a friend, and they're going to go and start doing their backpacking thing.
Nice.
She's checking out of education for a minimum a year, and she wants to go and find an internship. She's contacted Alex Gladstein at Human Rights Foundation to see if she can do some kind of internship at some point, which I am fully down with and support 100%. So we are now all location independent. My work is a podcast, like you. My wife is a mother. My 3 kids are doing online self-directed education. So we're now thinking, well, this door's just open. This is an interesting opportunity. The rent on the house that we're currently renting runs out in November. what do we do? Do we try and renew? Do we go traveling? Do we keep the house and go to a month somewhere and come back? Go a month somewhere else and then come back? So these are all decisions that, these are all options, that we're currently looking at and trying to formulate a plan. But as you know, like let's say we make that plan, right? Okay, we're going to go. What's first point of entry? Let's go to El Salvador. Let's make the pilgrimage. Let's go to Bitcoin Beach. Let's go see the guys. We'd be welcomed with open arms. Already have friends there. Why wouldn't we go there? We'll stay there for 2 weeks, then we'll go somewhere else. You know for sure that as soon as you get there, the plans are changed. You won't stay for 2 weeks. You might end up staying for 2 months. So it's about, and what affords you that freedom? The freedom of the way that I've set up my work. I don't have to sit at a desk anymore. The freedom of that ability to know I've stored my wealth in something that I know cannot be changed and inflated away from me.
Or confiscated, more to the point.
Yeah, or confiscated.
And you can take it over borders without doing too many problems.
Absolutely. And I can lean on it when I need it, right? Otherwise, I could probably live quite comfortably off the income from the show supporters in a country such as El Salvador, where things are a lot cheaper. And I could even use the Bitcoin to buy the things that I wanted. And this just blows open.
That's a good point, actually.
It completely. So if
it's
my salary
crossed your mind, right?
Yes, of course.
That going to El Salvador would be a really interesting,
of course,
6 months for you.
Of course. Yeah. And down there as well, you have Costa Rica and Guatemala, where Bitcoin communities have started opening up. Now, if my salary is in Bitcoin, and that salary goes a much longer way, why wouldn't we consider the option of that incredible adventure when my kids are still? So we'd be with 2 12-year-olds and a 15-year-old, and the opportunities it would offer them, and the learning and the mindset shift that I would go through and my wife would go through. It becomes addictive when you have those.
There's a lot of Bitcoiner kids in El Salvador now as well. That's what we discovered,
and that's what's so exciting about seeing this Prague conference. This was the most kids. I've been taking my kids to Bitcoin conferences over the last year, I suppose, and for a long time they were the only ones. Now, this was different. Like they were running their own little gaming lounge, right? Yeah. And the kids were
selling merch.
They were selling
very
merch.
Well.
My son made £70.
Wow.
300,000 sats. Like so 0.003 of a Bitcoin, right? If we're doing the math correct. Because he was working on commission for Ben Weeks, who had made the little tags, and they were running the Satsman, the little arcade gaming area. But what I loved about that as well, going back to kids of different ages, you had kids aged that the range was Nini, I think, was the youngest, right? Maybe she's 8. Samantha, I think, is a little older than Lauren and Samuel, so maybe it went up to is she 15? She gave a keynote on the stage.
Samantha Duval.
Yeah.
I saw her speak in El Salvador. She's an incredibly good speaker, isn't she? Did she speak after Sailor?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. So Sailor's the keynote. Who's after Sailor? 15-year-old kid.
15-year-old girl. And she's very good, isn't she? Very compelling, yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
You should definitely get her and Lauren to do something.
Yeah.
Because they're in the same kind of vein of,
So here's the thing, right? All of the adults are saying that. It's up to the kids.
Sure.
The kids have to decide to do it.
Have they?
Who knows? They're downstairs right now conspiring about something.
They? Right,
yeah.
Okay, right.
And they were up till 1 o'clock last night.
Yeah.
And, you bad parent, keeping your kids out till 1 o'clock. Well, we were sitting in the hotel bar in the lobby. I was having a conversation with Ben and Knut and Giacomo. I wasn't having a conversation. I was no part of the conversation. I was a fly on the wall as they're talking about, what did they call it? Libertarian socialism. I'm like, guys, what? And then, so it was just a fascinating conversation to be a part of. And over in the corner are Sam and Lauren, just like blah, 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 blah. You couldn't stop them talking. Couldn't stop them.
Do you happen to know if she is homeschooled as well? She is, isn't she?
She is not, because they live in Germany.
Ah, right.
But as Ben would say, he's spending far too much money to try and keep her out of the state education system. There are different tranches of it. So, of course, the more you pay, the little bit more freedom. So she'd be in a private school.
Is it illegal in Germany, or is it not?
Oh,
it's not just frowned upon. Is it actually illegal?
Have you heard me talk about this before?
No. Come at me, bro. Come on.
Homeschooling in Germany was very prevalent amongst the middle and slightly upper classes, all the way up until 1938, when it was slammed closed and made completely illegal by Hitler and Goering.
Really?
1938.
I take it that was to try and drum up support in an army situation. Is that? I mean, I'm going to guess that it's kind of.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have free thinkers in a society, Tim.
Well, especially not in one that needs a big army.
Right, exactly. So, but they were playing the long game, right? Because you don't indoctrinate kids into believing war is good in 1 year. But right, slam down homeschooling. No more of that. It's compulsory to take your children to the nearest state school. And point number 10, by the way, of Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto is a free public education. Right? So it's all there. 1938, that was completely banned by Hitler and Goering, upstanding, fine gentlemen. We all know why. We all know the reasons. We all know the society they were trying to create. Never been repealed. Who's running the ticket? Who's running for office in Germany and running on, guys, I'm going to repeal this law. We're going to take this out of the Constitution. It's going to be okay. You can homeschool your kids if you want. Because there are so many disturbing stories of families having their children taken away from them by social welfare workers. Again, in Liberty in Our Lifetime, a German guy came up to me afterwards. He was almost in tears. He's like, you've just uncovered to me what has been wrong in my whole life. And he was clearly on some kind of spectrum, thought in a certain way, probably some mathematical genius that just wanted to sit down and learn math. He was probably the kid that wanted to geek out on triangles at the age of 8, but wasn't allowed to, and was too damn clever for the class, right? So he's bored in class, so he becomes a troublemaker. I'm like, why are we doing this? Why are we multiplying mix? I can do all of this in my head. It's just natural. But no room for you in this system. We'll put you in special class or something, or accelerated learners, whatever whatever term they use. But you're not one of them. You're something else. And he was explaining how damaging that was. How he's never been able to get over it because of this situation. So if you try and homeschool in Germany, you're going to have the authorities all over you. It's illegal in Holland. Sweden as well. It's illegal in Sweden. That's why you've had Caroline and Pontus on here.
Yeah. I didn't realize it was illegal in Holland.
Oh yeah,
I know the Swedish one for me was a real eye opener. Mm-hmm. And do you know what else Caroline said, which I found really interesting, was to do with how Sweden is always branded as a bit of a COVID success story because they didn't lock anyone down.
Yeah.
And she said, look, the reason they didn't lock anyone down is because they wanted to keep the schools open. Because, they're massively, that's a huge part of their sort of modus operandi, is these, And, I had never thought of Sweden as being, you always think of it as being a really open-minded, progressive, kind of cool place. But yeah.
When you actually talk to Swedish people, we've now become friends with many of them, right? Because they're being attracted to the same kind of circles in which we are operating our work. Knut is another fine example of somebody that's just had to leave. Yeah. Had to leave. I mean, you have there a completely indoctrinated nation and cashless society.
Yeah, they are, aren't they? Whew. They're at the forefront of the CBDC thing.
Yeah,
right?
Man. It's...
God, nothing... Is there anything true that we thought?
I would argue not.
But aren't we... Doesn't that make us just contrarians? We missing... We must be missing some stuff. It does seem like everything is so messed up these days. And I know the simple answer to that is always, it's the money. Mm. It's the distortion of the money causing a massive distortion of incentives, causing a massive distortion of everything everything that money touches and value, which is everything pretty much of value expression, But is it really? Like that's a dangerous thought, isn't it? You end up that meme. You end up with like everyone in the crowd looking one way,
Yeah,
and you going, but you're wrong, and you're like, but normally in life that doesn't work out. Normally in life, when a lot of people think the same thing, it's often because it's correct.
Or the propaganda's been strong enough that everybody just believes the same thing and does the same thing, and
school
fits in.
School is a very good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
It does take a lot of work as an adult to start entertaining thoughts of school as just being some social construct that someone came up with the idea and then implemented it. Mm-hmm. And relatively recently, especially in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of humanity.
Oh yeah, it's a dot on the line. It's a failed experiment. It's a social engineering. It's eugenics. It's really, you're right. Lifetime history of humanity, like this schooling project. Let's really say from like 1850, where Horace Mann from the US, he traveled over. I think maybe it's 1870. I don't know the exact dates. Gatto talks about it, and studied the Prussian schooling system, which was put in place to militarize Prussia. Took it back to the US.
Is that the understood beginning of the system?
Of the system, of Prussia. It was all based on that model. And then, of course, it goes across to the US. It gets strongly funded, this model.
How much do you know about historical teaching methods and stuff? Like talking, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, Egyptians, whatever. Do you know much about any of that stuff?
I don't, but let's go back to ancient Greece, right? What were they doing?
I don't know.
Right?
I don't know. Did they have schools then, or
the word pedagogue is a Greek term. I learned this again from Taylor Gatto. A pedagogue was somebody that was employed by the family in Greece to tutor or mentor their kids. So basically, homeschooling, right? Division of labor. Like, spend an hour or two with this pedagogue. But now that word gets used like, what's the pedagogy that you are using to in your classroom? It's like it's been turned upside down. It's like, right, here's a mass bunch of kids. What are the pedagogical methods that we're going to? It's complete nuts. So what else was going on? I go back to the tribes, right? What was going on in medieval England? What were they doing? That they were probably just
people
families.
were learning skills, weren't they?
Yes, they were tradesmen, exactly.
Or family skills, like whatever that was. There wasn't necessarily the desire to learn trigonometry unless you were, like your father was some kind of a mason. So
yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
That's pure trigonometry, isn't it?
Right.
If you are like literally shaping stones to build a roof for your neighbor who's going to repay you, I don't know, maybe there's a barter system, like repay you in X amount of cattle, then yeah, you would know it without actually sitting down in a classroom studying it. You would have been taught it, you would have picked it up, or you would have been self-learned.
You're right. It's the difference between a decentralized learning system and a centralized one, isn't it? The centralized one says, here's the curriculum, right, everyone learn it. The decentralized one says, every family, what are you already doing? What are your kids going to do? Or in your case, let's see what they're into. Because we have that luxury now. We have the sort of 21st century version of that.
And coming back to your village in Wales, how many of those kids are going to grow up and be farmers?
Well, exactly.
They're not.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a banker.
Well, no. I mean, there's much more different pressures on the farmers than even that. The ability to farm is under immense pressure now.
Why?
Well, for starters, a farm costs at least £1.5 million. Like a farm, Even a farm with only 5 acres is £1 million, let alone a farm with what you really want, which is 300 or 400 acres, if you really want to do farming well. And then take my neighbor who, I've recently orange pilled, who now accepts Bitcoin for her meat, who's now selling half. Do you want to hear an incredible story?
Yes.
An absolutely bizarre story. So the Free Cities Foundation booth here at Prague is next to Bitcoiner Jobs.
Yep.
Do you know Bitcoiner Jobs?
Nathan and Liam. Yep.
Right. I think it's Nathan. Is Nathan the guy with the beard?
Correct.
Right. Never met Nathan before. Go to the booth, sit down, clock the guys next to me. All right, how you doing? Go over for a chat. Start chatting. Get onto the subject of meat somehow. I don't know. He's like, and as we talking, we realise he's buying half a cow off Kate, who's my neighbour. Right? No, but it gets worse, mate. It gets worse. This is an incredible coincidence, right? So I said, "Oh, look, dude, because I want to come over and pick it up myself." He said, "I'm moving house, and when I've got this new house, I'm getting this massive freezer. We're buying half a cow, and I'm going to go and collect it from Wales myself." I said, "Well, dude, I live, 2 miles from her. She's my neighbour. You better come over and see us, or we'll come and meet you at the farm, and we'll hang out." And he said, "Oh, you live there, right?" I said, "We were up in your neck of the woods last weekend. I went canoeing on the River Wye," and I said, that's a funny as hell story. I said, because we've been Airbnb, it was half term, we've been Airbnb our house, and our neighbour who lives down on the river, it had gone away, so they lent us their house to stay in while someone was staying in our house. And they live right on the river, and they've got this little beach in front of their river. A little beach on the river, and every day, because it was really super hot weather, and we were on holiday, kind of like on holiday, half term, I'd be sat there. We'd have barbecues, a few beers, a few ciders, and whatever. And as you're sitting there, hundreds of people are going past on, canoeing down the river, because it's a really beautiful stretch of river. Anyway, check this out, mate. I like taking responsibility for things. And this particular point in the river, just down from us, there's a fork in the river. You have to take the left fork. If you take the right fork, you get into problems. And I'm always just sat there often of an evening going, all right, say hello to everyone going past and going left, 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 left. And Nathan was one of those people. And he said to me, "Hold on a minute, did you tell us to go left?" And I went, "Get out of here." I said, "That was me. Sat there in a deck chair, like on a little beach, and this is some random guy I've never met before. I mean, what an incredible coincidence is that? Like, what are the chances of that happening?
We're all connected, huh?
Well, I mean,
biomagnetic nodes.
God knows what that was. I mean, I've had a few coincidences in my life, but that is like, like very strange coincidence. I don't know how I got onto that story, but like orange pilling your neighbours. Yeah. How did we get onto that? I've completely lost the train of thought.
I don't know, but what were we talking about?
I can't even remember. You said you started talking about Wales. You went, Wales.
We were talking about farming.
The pressures of farming,
Yes.
which is, like I say, Kate is under immense pressure. Basically, because, for example, she chooses to farm red ruby cows, which are better meat, slower growing. So you don't slaughter a cow after, less than a year. They go well on into sort of a year and a half, maybe even more. So you have to charge more for them because you have to feed them for longer. You have to, there's whatever. However, they sell to Waitrose. Waitrose just buys meat. Yeah. It doesn't stipulate what kind of cow it is. And if you can't, if they're the only buyer, then that's who you sell to. And you're selling your cows, which are very high quality meat, slow growing, at the same price as the dude from Birmingham who's just knocking out cows as fast as he can, kind of thing. And they were desperate to sell direct to customers because that's how you get to then find the free market of your meat is how much is a real customer prepared to pay, not a middleman who's, but the real customer, how much they're going to pay. And I saw her at a wedding, a local wedding, and I said, look, you don't know what Bitcoin is, but just tell you one thing, right? If you accept this money called Bitcoin, I can sort of I can introduce you to a market, right? Just a marketplace of people who will gladly buy your meat. And she was kind of like, what? And I said, even I used Coin Corner. So I said to her, you don't even really, in the first instance, you don't even need to receive Bitcoin, yourself. No, sorry, you don't need to keep Bitcoin yourself. You just need to receive it. Mm-hmm. And she said, okay, let's go for it then. So spoke to Coin Corner, got them connected, she got her account. Then I tweeted it, beef for Bitcoin.
Yep.
Bloody hell. Instant, gone. And I got a text that day saying, my God, what's going on? The next few texts started coming about a week later. It was like, wow, I said, like, Bitcoiners are really interesting. They're really interested in what I'm doing. Like they're saying, thank you for doing this. They're saying, they're interested in the breed. And I was like, yeah. And then probably 3 to 4 weeks later, the texts were, right, how do I keep some Bitcoin? Mm-hmm. How do I get Bitcoin? She didn't even realize that she was being paid in Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. All she knew was, her account was receiving Bitcoin and pounds were appearing in her Coin Corner account. I said to her, look, you're receiving Bitcoin. You're just choosing to convert it into, and now she's got a lovely little, process. So there's some hardcore maxis who are paying her directly. I set her up with a Electrum wallet. Mm-hmm. She knows how to create an invoice herself. Doesn't have to, so there's those guys, the regulars, the half cow guys, all those, they can just send a direct. Everyone else comes through there. And, I think this is a really important way of orange pilling people, is not to say, look, you've got to receive Bitcoin, because it's probably wrong. I found this in El Salvador, too volatile. Mm-hmm. Why would the pupusa lady want Bitcoin when if she keeps it for 6 months, it might be worth 75% less, But I think once you start dealing in Bitcoin and realizing that even the market works in your favor, El Salvador's seen exactly the same thing. Open be Bitcoin friendly. Wow. All of a sudden, oh my God, families of Bitcoiners are moving to your country. Like, it's insane, Anyway, rant over. I think that was my final flush coming out, mate. Look, we've had, oh my God, 2 hours. Jesus. And you've got things to do today, haven't you? We're both leaving Prague today, but maybe we should wrap it up. Just before we do, though, what's your latest rabbit hole? Not niacin. What's the latest rabbit hole?
Yeah, it has been the niacin recently. Has been front and foremost of my mind.
What's one I probably haven't heard of?
What have we done? We've done education.
Kind of done health.
Kind of done health, kind of done, with the niacin.
We've done money a million times.
Oh, well, yeah, we have. But I was going to come back to that. Even though, I've been studying money. Well, I should say, since I was 19 when I joined the foreign exchange markets, but there was no studying going on there. There was parroting numbers. That's all we were doing, and trying to win commission. And
I've thought of something, but anyway, go on.
Yep. But the book that I read that just blown my mind open even further is a book which is it's very underread even in the Bitcoin space. So if anybody is listening to this who's just from the freedom space and is fast forwarding the times we're talking about Bitcoin, that's perfectly fine. Just pick up a book called The Secrets of the Federal Reserve.
I knew you were going to say that.
By Eustace Mullins.
I've bought it, mate.
Right.
I haven't read it yet. I've been stacking another book, but
yeah. Oh, my pile of shame is like.
Come on,
and
then.
I've got 4 books to take back from this conference.
So what are give us the 101 on what are the secrets of the Federal Reserve?
So Eustace Mullins is the author, and he wrote this book back in the mid-40s, which is always interesting to me to find authors who are way closer to the time of the events that these were all playing out. Because many of us in these circles have read The Creature from Jekyll Island by Edward Griffin, who, by the way, has also written a book on vitamin B12 and linked that to cancer, but I've not dived into that book yet. Again, pile of shame so high. So anyway, Creature of Jekyll Island. Many people have read it, and a lot of people were just completely blown away by the story. But the original story was told by Eustace Mullins, and he had visions of becoming this amazing fictional writer, and he was looking for mentors at the time, and he found a mentor in Ezra Pound, who was an Italian. Would you call him a refugee? I think he was moved across, political refugee probably, from Italy, who was very much outspoken and against both wars, and was moved across to America. And then, the same old classic story. Okay, you're actually just a nutcase, and we can't have you saying all this stuff and on radio shows and whatever else. And maybe you're just insane and you need to be looked after, and put in a mental asylum for 13 years, where they kept him without any kind of trial or anything like that, just completely cancelled. But Eustace would go and visit Ezra because he was, I think still is considered like one of the most amazing literary writers, poets of our time. And on one of those visits where Ezra was mentoring Eustace, he said to him, go and study the Federal Reserve System. I think he even gave him a banknote. Said, there's nothing behind this. This is smoke and mirrors. Go and write the story. Write that story, but write it in the best way that you can. And that is what sent Eustace down the rabbit hole. And the rabbit hole for him opened up when he was, he used all of the minutes of the meetings, of those meetings that were the ones that were actually documented, not the Jekyll Island one, which was a completely secret meeting. And the reason we know about it is because the people that went there, the 7 or 8 people that went there, under the cover of going on a duck hunt to Jekyll Island, which is an island it's full of like cottages, they call them in the US, right? These huge mansions that were owned by the same old family names that everybody knows already. They went there on a duck hunt, but they slid out of Hoboken Station in a private carriage on a train, dead of night in 1910, to go and basically all brainstorm, think tank operation. Let's get a Federal Reserve Act pushed through Congress so we can incorporate a central bank in the US. And they'd already tried. There'd been 2 central banks to that point, which had both been knocked down and closed. I think Jefferson closed one because they were unconstitutional. Still are, but yet we have the Federal Reserve. And the brainiacs put together this cunning plan, which they enacted. They managed to get it into past Congress Christmas week of 1913, which again is pretty unconstitutional because half the Congress wasn't even there to vote on the damn thing.
Common political tactic.
Right.
Even to this day.
Yeah. So he tells that whole story. And where it takes you on this journey of the people involved, where they come from, how they placed certain politicians to be in the right place at the right time to get the act through, who's intermarried to all of who else. And it's just this dark web of
nepotism.
Yeah. And then you see it and you're like, okay, they're the people that control the money and have done since 1913. Because what happened since then? Well, we went through the whole thing and the US dollar became the global world reserve currency. So we literally have people pulling strings over everything because it's all linked to that meeting.
Well, I don't want to end on a dark note.
No.
Maybe we should sort of transform that somehow to a positive message.
Well, yeah, and I guess the positive takeaway to that would be if you read the book, you will end up in a dark place, but you need to go to that dark place to start climbing back out of it to see the light. Because if you don't have the education, you'll never be able to, you'll never be able to, for those people that are running on that hamster wheel, that can't figure out, how did I paint myself into this corner? Why am I unable to leave my job? Why do I believe I've got to sit here and play this corporate game for the next 20 years. It's exhausting. I'm overweight. I'm on some kind of medication. I can't sleep 3 nights a week. My stress is through I don't know my kids. Like, how did I get here? That book explains it. And until you have that knowledge, you can't start working for yourself, like mentally, physically, monetarily. You just can't. You'll just forever be. You have to understand how you got there.
And it's a process.
And it's a process. And the education system is part of that. The health system is part of that, because the same people monopolized all of these different areas.
I think it's important to point that out, because understanding, for want of a better term, that you are stuck in the matrix, let's say, is just stage one of many stages. And understanding it is the first step on a very long journey that we are all at various stages of, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. In particular, when it comes to making a living, because it can be quite destructive to be working a job while simultaneously realizing that it's complete bullshit.
Most of us make, but this, what I realized, I wasn't making a living. I was making an existence. I was existing, but I wasn't living. That's why I call my book Choose Life, because the transformation that happened to us afterwards. People would say to me, like, all right, Dan, or you might have been traveling for a year. Okay, well, when are you going to come back to real life? Like, dude, you think what you're doing is real life? Oh my God. Like, I cannot explain to you the experiences I've had of it. I am, for the first time in my life, I'm 38, and I'm living like, I feel freedom. I'm living a life that I want to lead. I'm with my family all day. I'm with my wife all day. And you might have had the same kind of thing said to you. Or Liz might have had this, which is even more kind of concerning. My wife had several of her friends, women friends, say to her, I don't know how you do it. How could you be around your husband for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Oh, you're like, that tells you, that signal there of how wrong society is and how disconnected we are on a family level, like truly, by being in that system. When you, like, your day-to-day might be gently waking a 6-year-old from their sleep at 6:30 in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning, to get them up, to bring them downstairs while they're all still bleary-eyed, to put a bowl of shitty cereal, sugary crap bathed in white water and some kind of sugary drink to sustain them, like that. This is complete nonsense. And then to hurry them into their same uniform as everybody else, put on your scratchy shirt, wear those shoes. I don't like these shoes. I don't care. Put them on. They've got to be black, and they've got to be lace up. We can't have Velcro. Like, all of these stupid rules that gets passed down into the schooling system. Shuttle them into the car or the school bus to get them to the school gate where you're finally, and you think you're doing the right thing.
Funnily enough, I didn't hear that, or Liz didn't hear that, but she did hear, or we did hear from a number of people we knew. Oh wow, it's amazing. I would love to do that. I just couldn't do it. And I remember that was, I think, what we heard from absolutely everyone. Yeah. I can't do that. And obviously the answer to that is you can do that.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. You can do that, and we did it during the middle of the pandemic as well. So we had even more people saying you can't do it. We had like the police saying you can't do it, even though you could do it. You could do it. You just went ahead and do it. Or the government saying you can't fly, and then you go to the airport and you realize, hey, you can fly. No, it's a bit smoke and mirrors here. But that those stories we tell ourselves are basically the the prison bars in which we live.
One nice story I had from this conference happened 2 days ago. I was signing some of my books at the Consensus Network stand, and I'd come down and I was having a conversation with a couple of guys, and I could just sense there was somebody over my shoulder just kind of hanging around. And so I finished the conversation with the people that wanted to come over and talk about the book. And I turned around and I said, "Oh, hi, how are you doing?" He's like, "Daniel, I just wanted to come over and introduce myself." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, cool." And he told me his name. He said, "I read your book last October." I'm like, "Okay, well, thank you. I hope you got some value from it." "Well, I wanted to give you some feedback about it." I'm like, "Please, yeah, I'd love any kind of feedback." "I hated it." I'm like, "Okay, interesting. I'll tell you why I hated it. Because you exposed to me every stupid fucking excuse I'd been relying on for years. And reading your book, you just smashed it down, every single barrier. And I'm not even married, I don't even have kids. So what the fuck was I doing? I could have changed my life 5 years ago." So I read that in October. I've changed my life, been traveling ever since November. So I just wanted to come over and say thank you.
Bravo.
And that was like, oh, fucking hell, man. Nice delivery, by the way. Like, yeah, you it's just amazing. But it is the stories we tell ourselves, the excuses. And then when you make the decision, that's not the first, that's just the first turn of the flywheel, right? Because now you've got to actually put the plan into action.
Proof of work.
You've got to start listing your home on Airbnb, or do what we did, put it on a home swap site. And then that opens up a whole, God knows, can of worms. Like, oh, what about these fears and that fear and this fear? And then you got to start, like we were moving country, you got to start selling all your stuff. Like, oh, this stuff that I'm so attached to. All of a sudden you realize that table I loved is out of the house. We have more room in the house, but weirdly I have more room in my mind. And that was just a piece of wood. So the things you own end up owning you, right? That classic quote. And going through that process. But a lot of people, that they it's just one decision at a time. Don't look at the huge thing. Right, okay, if we do this, we've got to do this. No, massive long to-do list, not doing that. It's just easier just to carry on. And what we were doing, what we were dreaming. Pipe dream, just back to sleep, get up. I've got work tomorrow. I've got an email to send.
You just hit the nail on the head. It's exactly that. If you got to give yourself goals that you could achieve in the short term. Don't understand that where the top of the mountain is, but concentrate on today, getting to base camp or something.
Fear setting was the thing I did, because Tim Ferriss talked about that in his original book. So I did that exercise. Instead of goal setting, I did fear setting. And fear setting was write down, like actually physically write down the number one fear. What's stopping you from doing what you want to do? And in my case, it was quit my job, go traveling with my family, take my kids out of school. Like, 3 huge things, right? What's your biggest fear? Biggest fear is go bankrupt, end up living under a bridge.
Pretty big fear.
Right? But that was what kept going through that's what was keeping me awake at night. Like literally visions of us laying on cardboard under a bridge because of this stupid decision I was trying to make, of this stupid kind of hubristic idea that I don't need to live in this corporate world. Who do I think I am? I'm so special. I can do something different. I don't want to live this life. You just, all of a sudden you have that kind of thought. You're like, all right, yeah, no, of course not. No, just straight back to work. So the idea being, write down the biggest fear, but then write down 2 or 3 steps that you would take if that did actually happen. What are the 2 or 3 steps that you would take to rectify that situation? And you're like, well, I guess, back to your point, I guess I'd call my family. And between my wife and I, she's got 2 brothers, I've got 2 brothers, both have parents, they've all got their own houses each. You add up the amount of spare bedrooms across those houses, you're like, all right, yeah. We wouldn't actually ever be living under a bridge somewhere. And then what would happen after that? Well, once you found the food and shelter and you're around the people that you love and you can care for, what would you do to rectify your bankruptcy? I guess I would hit the phones and start talking to my old colleagues, my network. Where's the work? Is there anything going on? Can I come back to the markets? Probably would have taken 5 phone calls to find an opening somewhere, and then you're back and employed. So smashing all of those fears down was so easy. But you have to go through that thought process in the first place to do it.
Well, Dan, thanks, mate. I know we're way over time, but I love our conversations. They're always invigorating. I do feel invigorated again, so thanks. You know, you've been you gave me huge amounts of support when we decided to take off, and I needed it because my wife doesn't always trust me. I'm the one who just jumps in feet first, always, at all times. She's far more conservative about the decisions she makes.
I remember our Zoom calls with you and Liz and me and Claire.
Yeah, it's very useful to, especially for a woman, to hear from another woman.
Precisely. And actually, Claire, she writes a paragraph or two in at the end of each chapter in my book. There's Claire's perspective, which sometimes. So probably the most feedback I've had about the book is the paragraph or two she adds at the end of each chapter, and the most feedback I have about my podcast is that my daughter asked the first questions on each show.
Correct. Yes.
So someone's telling me something somewhere.
Yeah, it's funny that when I used to make films at the BBC, there was a similar meme, which was you do a massive multi-million-pound documentary about something, and the most talked about part of it was the making of bit,
right,
that they showed at the end of it. Always,
yep.
You know, it's like 5 minutes shot on shitty cameras, you know, as an afterthought, and that's what everyone banged on about. Wow, they hung a camera in a tree, or they put it on a you know, whatever, you know, and it was like, oh yeah. So forget the actual piece of art that was made or whatever, it's the making of that's more interesting.
The behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's because humans are just naturally inquisitive, right? Like
people want to do it.
Yeah.
People feel empowered when they see that stuff. They want to know how to do it. You know, hiding those secrets from people, that's a crime. You know, if you want to empower people, you show them how you did what you did. And, you know, the stingier you are about that, the more likely you are to just, you know, smash up against a dead end, you know.
Which again, that's the legacy system, right? You know, patent laws, for example. Like, I'm not going to tell you how we did this. This is us. This is ours. We don't want you coming in and competing against our business. So what do we end up with? We end up with one product that's never going to get better. It's crazy. So yeah, being and that's what we love about Bitcoin, being open source and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, decentralized. Well, mate, thanks very much, Dan. And I mean, obviously, buy the book. Everyone, you know, you're actually as well this year. You are comparing at our conference.
Yes.
So that may be the next time I see you. I don't know. What's
Liberty in Our Lifetime. We should chill the conference. It's going to be 14th, 15th, 16th of October, I believe, Tim.
15th and 16th of October. Hey,
right.
Look at that.
Look,
someone's knocking on the door.
We're being interrupted.
I think that's I'm supposed to be checking out. All right, mate. It was great talking to you, and thanks for everything.
Thank you for what you do too, Tim. Take care.